Have you ever had that strange feeling that something big is about to happen in your life? It's not anxiety, it's not paranoia, it's a kind of quiet pressure in your chest, as if the universe is holding its breath before revealing something that will change everything. If you're feeling this now, or if you felt it at any point in the last few months, then this message was made especially for you. Because what I'm going to share here in the coming minutes could be the very confirmation you've been waiting for to take the next step. Stay with me until the end. What is coming may be the key you needed to unlock what's next. There is a pattern that repeats in the lives of people who undergo great transformations. They aren't necessarily the most talented, they aren't the most educated, they aren't the ones who had the best starts. What they have in common is something far more subtle and yet far more powerful. They persisted when no one was watching. They made the right choice when the wrong choice was much easier. And they kept believing even when the silence of the universe felt like a definitive answer of rejection. Does this profile fit you? If the answer is yes, then you need to understand one fundamental thing before we go on. What you've lived through until now has not been in vain. Every obstacle, every frustration, every night you wondered if you were on the right path, all of it was part of a preparation process. And that process has a destination. Today, I'll show you how to recognize when a transformative proposal is coming your way, how to prepare to receive it without letting fear speak louder than faith, and most importantly, how not to waste the most important moment of your journey. Let me ask you something honestly. How many times in the last few years have you looked at your life and had the feeling you were running in circles? You work, you strive, you pray, you try, but it seems like there's an invisible ceiling preventing you from reaching the place you know. Deep in your heart, you were made to occupy. That feeling has a name. It's called perceived stagnation. And it's one of the most painful experiences a human being can go through, precisely because it's silent. It's not an obvious crisis. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. It's not a catastrophe everyone can see. It's that dull ache that appears at the most unexpected moments, when you wake up in the middle of the night and feel time is passing, when you see someone from your generation achieving things you also desire, and the feeling that arises isn't joy, but a confusing mix of admiration and personal questioning. When you try to put into words what you're feeling, and the phrase that comes closest is, "I know I was made for more than this." If you're past 35 and this phrase resonates in your chest, know you are not alone. According to research on personal satisfaction and life purpose, this so-called meaning crisis tends to intensify between the ages of 35 and 55. It's the phase when a person begins to ask the deepest questions about legacy, impact, and inheritance. It's the phase when life demands an answer about who you've truly decided to be. But here's what most people don't know. This anguish is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of awakening. It's your soul letting you know you are ready for the next level, even if your mind hasn't fully processed it yet. Now I need to tell you something that will change how you see your ordinary days. There is a silent law that governs the moment when great opportunities come to people. It has nothing to do with luck. It has to do with an invisible pattern of behavior. Think about it. When someone with the power of decision, be it a mentor, an investor, a spiritual guide, or the universe itself in its higher intelligence, decides to send a transformative proposal to someone, that choice isn't random. It's based on observation, on analysis of character, on an assessment of how you behave when no one is looking. There is a scene that happens every single day across the country, and it might be happening in your life right now. It's the professional who arrives early and does good work even when the boss isn't present. It's the parent who cares for their children with love even on days they are exhausted and no one will recognize that effort. It's the business owner who honors a financial commitment even when an easier way out could be found. These are the choices no one applauds, but they form the invisible fabric of your reputation before the universe. Speaking spiritually, and here I draw on both scriptural wisdom and universal principles shared by various philosophical traditions, there is a recurring truth. The one who is faithful with little will be entrusted with much. This isn't just a nice verse. It's an accurate description of how the law of promotion works. You don't receive the great challenge before proving you can handle the small ones well. You don't receive greater responsibility before demonstrating integrity behind the scenes. And when you truly understand this, you stop treating your ordinary days as obstacles and start treating them as preparation tests. Every day you wake up and choose to do the right thing when you could have done the easy thing. You deposit an invisible credit into an account that only time will reveal. And a moment will come when that account has sufficient balance to finance the greatest leap of your story. But how do you know when that proposal is on its way? There are signs, and they are more common than you think. The problem is, most people misinterpret them. The first sign is intensified discomfort. You know when suddenly everything feels tighter? When your comfort zone, which once felt comfortable, starts to feel like a prison. When you look at what you have and feel the space no longer fits who you are becoming. That discomfort isn't punishment, it's expansion. It's the universe creating enough pressure for you to move in the right direction. The second sign is unexpected encounters. A conversation that seems casual with someone you just met, a message that arrives at a time that couldn't be more opportune, an event you almost didn't attend, but something made you go. These encounters aren't coincidences. They are convergence points in a web that was woven long before you noticed. The third sign is increased internal clarity. You begin to know, without being able to explain exactly how, what you want. Things that once confused you start to make sense. You look back and see a clear line connecting all the experiences that seemed disconnected. This is the most powerful sign of all, because clarity precedes manifestation. The fourth sign is the emergence of character tests. Precisely when the opportunity is closest, the tests become more intense. A temptation to act dishonestly. A situation testing your patience to the limit. A relationship demanding you choose between what's easy and what's right. These tests don't appear to knock you down. They appear to confirm you are ready. There is a silent enemy that destroys more dreams than any external obstacle. It has a simple name and a devastating force: comparison. And in today's world, with social media feeding a constant stream of other people's achievements before your eyes, this enemy has become more powerful than ever. You open your phone and see an acquaintance who started a business and is growing. You see someone who got the promotion. You see a neighbor renovating their house. You see a cousin traveling. And the question that arises within you, even if you don't want to admit it, is, why them and not me? That question is poisoned, not because it's wrong in itself, but because it starts from a false premise that everyone should be at the same point at the same time. as if every human's destiny followed the same calendar, the same rhythm, the same sequence of steps. The truth is, every life has its own time to blossom. Some people bloom early and fade fast. Some spend decades being cultivated in silence. And when they finally open, they do so completely and so radiantly that it seems impossible that seed was quiet for so long. The experienced gardener knows this. They don't pull the plant from the ground because it didn't grow at the same rate as the neighbors. They keep watering, keep fertilizing, keep tending the soil, because they understand the growth process has its own laws that do not bow to human impatience. You are on your time, not on anyone else's, and this isn't cheap consolation. It's a structural truth about how destiny operates. When you stop comparing and start committing exclusively to your own journey, something shifts in the quality of your attention. You stop looking sideways and start looking forward. And it is exactly in this posture of focus that the great proposals can find you. There's one more thing about timing that needs to be said. Many people believe they've missed the moment, that the window closed, that they've become too old, too tired, too committed with obligations to start over or move forward. And this belief, more than any external circumstance, is what truly closes the doors. Think of the stories of people who transformed their lives after 40, after 50, even after 60. Right here, we have countless examples of entrepreneurs who started their most successful businesses after 45. Of people who found deep, transformative relationships after believing they never would again. Of professionals who completely reinvented their careers and discovered a purpose they never would have found had they stayed on the original path. What these stories have in common is that they all began with a decision made at an age when most people believe it's already too late. And that is exactly where the powerful irony of life resides. The same moment that seems the most unlikely for a new beginning is often the most fertile. Because the person has arrived there with a baggage of experience, maturity, and self-knowledge that simply didn't exist in the decades before. You know, the most profound shifts often arrive in the quiet moments we least expect, carrying a blueprint for a life we never could have imagined from our old vantage point. And that brings us to a truth many overlook: why so many people miss the very proposal heaven has sent. I need to be honest with you, even if this creates some discomfort. Most individuals receive a transformative proposal in some form during their lifetime. The issue is they don't recognize it. Or worse, they recognize it, but fear speaks louder than faith. Let me show you the main patterns of how this happens. The first pattern is the "I'm not ready" syndrome. The proposal arrives, it's real, it's powerful, and the first reaction is a mental list of all the reasons you're not yet equipped to accept it. I don't have enough experience yet. I haven't resolved that financial issue. I haven't overcome that personal problem. I'll accept it once I'm more prepared. The problem is that definitive readiness never comes, because preparation doesn't precede the proposal. Preparation happens within the proposal. You become who you need to be in the process of living the challenge the proposal demands. Waiting to be completely ready before accepting is like waiting to know how to swim before ever entering the water. The second pattern is letting other people's opinions become the supreme judge. You receive the proposal, you feel it's real, you feel it's for you, but then you make the most common mistake among people from 35 to 55. You go ask others what you should do. And those others, with all the love they have for you, hand you back their own fears packaged as advice for you. Consulting trusted people isn't wrong. The problem is when external opinion becomes more authoritative than your internal perception. When you know the proposal from within, when you feel in the core of your being that it was sent for you, no external opinion should carry more weight than that inner knowing. The third pattern is confusing the vehicle for the destination. The proposal rarely looks like what you imagined it would be. You spend years asking for a specific change in a specific way, and when the change arrives, it wears completely different clothing. A job offer that seems smaller than you expected, but opens doors you never imagined. A relationship that begins in a way you didn't plan, but leads you exactly where you needed to go. A loss that looks like a failure, but in hindsight was the most precise redirection you could have received. When you're waiting for a very specific form, you can let the substance pass you by, and the substance is always worth more than the packaging. Now, I want to balance this conversation with something neuroscience and behavioral psychology have discovered about moments of great change in human life, because faith without evidence can seem like an illusion to many. And the beauty is that science and spirituality point in the same direction when it comes to real transformation. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize, create new connections, and literally change its structure in response to new experiences. And what studies show is that this capacity doesn't decline with age the way most people believe. It can be activated at any stage of life, but it requires two fundamental ingredients: intention and action. When you decide to accept a challenge that surpasses your current comfort zone, you literally initiate a biological process of neural reorganization. New pathways are built in your brain. New capacities emerge. The version of you on the other side of the challenge is neurologically different from the version that entered it. Positive psychology, in turn, has extensively documented what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called the state of flow, that condition where you are so aligned with what you're doing that you lose track of time, feel you're operating at the edge of your capabilities, and yet with a fluency that seems almost magical. The state of flow happens exactly at the meeting point between challenge and skill. Not when the task is too easy, not when it's too hard, but when it's just the right size for who you are now, with room to grow. And spiritually, what traditions call a calling functions in a very similar way. A genuine calling always invites you beyond who you are today, but never beyond who you can become. It is calibrated for your capacity to grow, not for your current comfort zone. Now let's get practical, because knowing how to recognize the proposal is important, but knowing how to respond is what will determine whether you walk through the door or keep looking at it from afar. The first step is to silence the external noise long enough to hear what you truly feel about the opportunity. Not what your family expects, not what your colleagues would do, not what immediate financial logic says. What do you, at the deepest level of yourself, feel about it? There's a clear difference between the fear of growing, which is universal and inevitable, and the genuine intuition that something isn't for you. Learning to distinguish these two is one of the most important skills you can develop. The second step is to ask the right question. Most people faced with a great opportunity ask, "Can I do this?" That's the wrong question, because the honest answer is often that you don't know. The right question is, who would I need to become to do this? This shift in questioning is subtle but revolutionary. It takes the focus off where you are now and places it on the process of transformation. And when you ask this question, you realize the challenge isn't a judgment of your current insufficiency. It's an invitation for your expanded version to emerge. The third step is to build your intentional support group. I'm not talking about asking for permission. I'm talking about surrounding yourself with people who have already been through similar transformations, who understand the cost and value of growth, and who can share real experience instead of projecting their own unresolved fears onto you. In many cultures, family bonds are intense and precious, but they can also be one of the greatest fields of unconscious resistance when it comes to a shift in your level of being. People who genuinely love you can, without meaning to, become the biggest obstacles to your advancement simply because your change challenges the collective narrative of the group. The fourth step is to act before you're completely ready. Taking the first concrete step toward the proposal, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, breaks the cycle of paralysis and activates the transformation process. Action generates a clarity that reflection alone can never achieve. You learn more in the first 30 days of movement than in the last 2 years of planning. Think of your own story. You know someone, perhaps a relative, perhaps a close friend, perhaps yourself at some earlier point in life, who looked at a big opportunity and said yes, even with fear. And how was that process? Invariably, when someone tells the story of the yes that changed everything, the narrative has a similar structure. There was uncertainty at the beginning. There were moments when everything seemed to be falling apart. There were days when doubt was louder than faith. But there were also small confirmations along the way, subtle signs that the path was right, encounters that happened at the exact right time, resources that appeared when they seemed impossible to find. And in the end, when that person looks back, they can't imagine who they would be if they had said no. The version of themselves they became by going through the challenge is so superior to the version that existed before that the fear of the time seems, in retrospect, completely disproportionate. That is the pattern of the chosen ones. It's not that they don't have fear, it's that they've learned to act in spite of the fear. It's that they've discovered that on the other side of uncertainty, there is always a more complete version of themselves waiting to emerge. I cannot speak of transformative proposal without speaking of faith. And here I use the word faith in its broadest, most universal sense. The capacity to act toward an outcome you cannot yet see completely, based on the belief that the process will reveal the way. In the human experience, spirituality is a living part of many cultures. Regardless of individual religious tradition, there is a collective understanding that there are forces greater than us operating in the construction of our destiny. And this understanding, when aligned with responsible human action, creates an extraordinarily powerful combination. Faith without action is inert. Action without faith is exhausting. But when you combine the genuine belief that you are being guided with the commitment to act to the best of your ability in every situation, you create a synergy that the most skeptical would call luck and the spiritually awakened would call grace. There is a principle that appears in almost all great spiritual traditions, rephrased in different ways but pointing to the same truth. When you move toward your calling with pure intention, the universe conspires to pave the way, not without obstacles, not without difficulties, but in a way where the obstacles and difficulties become precisely the tools that mold you for the level you are being called to occupy. I must also speak of the other side, because the freedom of choice is real, and that means you can choose not to accept the proposal, and that choice has consequences worth understanding. When you repeatedly ignore the internal call, when you close your eyes to the opportunities that arrive because fear is louder than faith, something gradually happens to your sense of purpose. It grows quieter, not because it has disappeared, but because the voice that invites you to greatness becomes progressively muffled by the noise of safety-first choices. Psychologists call this a living death, the state where the body keeps functioning, the routine keeps existing, but the internal spark that makes life genuinely alive slowly fades. It's the bitterness you see in people who spent their best years postponing what they most desired. It's the regret that emerges with full force in the final chapters of a story that could have been written differently. I'm not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying it because you deserve honesty. And the honest truth is that the cost of not acting, though it seems zero in the short term, is immense in the long term. The cost of acting, though it seems enormous in the short term, reveals itself to be a minimal fraction of what you receive in return. What if you feel the call hasn't arrived yet? What if you're in that season of waiting, of preparation, of invisible formation? What can you do right now to be in the most receptive state possible for when the moment comes? The first thing is to work on your inner identity before the outer change. Who do you need to become to receive and sustain the level you are asking for? It's not enough to desire the outcome. You must work to become the kind of person who naturally attracts and sustains that outcome. This involves working through limiting beliefs, cultivating discipline in small daily habits, and building integrity between what you think, what you say, and what you do. The second thing is to cultivate deliberate silence. We live in a noisy, dynamic world full of stimuli and demands that consume all our attention. The transformative call rarely arrives in a moment of maximum noise. It arrives in moments of quiet, in moments when you disconnect from the flow and reconnect with yourself. Set aside time every day, even if it's just 15 or 20 minutes, for silence, reflection, prayer, or meditation. This is the channel through which the most important messages arrive. The third thing is to train the muscle of gratitude. Not the performative gratitude you post on social media. Real, deep gratitude for what you already have, for what you've already been through, for who you've already become. Because genuine gratitude does two powerful things. It shifts your energetic frequency to a state more receptive to new blessings, and it helps you recognize the value of what is already present in your life, including the seeds of great opportunities that may be disguised as ordinary situations. A moment will come, and it may be closer than you think, when you will be faced with a choice that will define the next years of your story. A proposal will appear, a door will open, an invitation will arrive, and in that moment, all this content you are processing now will become something far more than information. It will become a set of tools for the most important decision you will make. In that moment, remember a few things. The fear you feel is not proof that the call is wrong. It is proof that it is sufficiently grand to transform you. The uncertainty you feel is not a lack of faith. It is the natural condition of any genuine advancement, and the feeling that you are not completely ready is not the truth. It is the ego's narrative that prefers the safety of the known to the glory of the unknown. Remember also that you do not need to see the entire path. You only need to see the next step. You just need enough clarity for the immediate move. The rest reveals itself in the process of walking. And remember, above all, that the call sent from above is not sent to people who already have all the answers. It is sent to people who have demonstrated the character necessary to seek the answers along the way. People who persisted when it was easier to stop. People who chose integrity when the shortcut was available. People who kept believing when the silence was deafening. People like you. One last thing I need you to engrave on your heart before we close. The call does not expire. The proposal may have come and been ignored before. The window may have seemed to close. You may be 40, 50, or 55 and thinking your time has passed. It hasn't. It never completely passes. Because the call is not chronological. It is ontological. It is part of your essence, not your schedule. And as long as you are alive, as long as you have the capacity to choose, the possibility of answering the call remains real. What changes with age is not the availability of the call. It is the clarity with which you can recognize it. And paradoxically, people who have lived more, who carry more experience, who have been through more cycles of loss and gain, are often better equipped to recognize and embrace a transformative call than younger people with less depth of life experience. Your story is not an obstacle to your destiny. It is the credential that makes it possible. Every scar, every breakthrough, every difficult chapter you survived is part of the resume that qualifies you for what lies ahead. Before you close this video, I want to propose a concrete action. Not tomorrow, today. Take a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone and answer these 3 questions with total honesty. First question: what is the proposal, invitation, or opportunity in your life right now that you have been avoiding out of fear? Second question: what is the worst real scenario, not imagined, that could happen if you move forward? And third question: what would the version of you that exists 3 years from now look like if you say yes today? Write those answers, reread them, and pay attention to what happens inside you as you reread. Because, attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.